Hello, I am Archivist Aaron, and welcome to my study. And today, we're actually gonna stay in the study for once, because we don't have a game to be playing. Now, I didn't know what to do today. I'm in kind of the same place that Morg was. I mean, I guess now she's playing Minecraft with the new server and everything, but I'm in pretty much the same place she was, where it's like, what do you do? What do I want to do? And it just always comes up blank. So, and that's kind of, it's not only like a streaming thing, that's also been just eternally what I'm kind of stuck with at this point. Like, I've just been watching TV shows recently. I haven't even been able to play games in the last few days because, like, I don't know what to play. But there were a few things that I wanted to explain. First of all, I finally got my computer working again. The last few days I've been having GPU issues, which I was kind of trying to track down and figure out, and I did a ton of things to try to fix it, including like updating drivers and stuff like that, and then it turns out the drivers, like the newest drivers, then broke things. So I was like trying to improve the speed of the hardware by getting the better drivers, because I assumed that was, having the outdated drivers was causing issues. And then for whatever reason, the newest driver made it so OBS broke. So that was a bit hectic. I had to try to figure out what the heck was going on, and eventually I figured out it was the driver, so I had to go back to an older one. It was a whole to-do, but we did a lot of stuff, and my computer's still kind of acting weird, but I'm just gonna roll with it. I also think that partially it was because I upped the settings on the stream a bit too much, and since I use the GPU for video encoding, it I think kind of overloaded it, having a game plus the higher settings on the stream. So I've kept the settings the same, except I've lowered the FPS, which in my mind would make it so that it halves the amount of work. Like if you go from 60 FPS to 30 FPS, that's half the frames, so half the work, at least as far as I can, as far as I can tell. That's what I would think that would do. But hopefully I won't have any more GPU issues. If I do, I might just need to lower the stream settings a bit, back down to like 720p again, because I mean, personally, I feel like 720p is perfectly reasonable for a stream, at least until I get a better GPU, which might be a while, I don't know, because those are expensive. And I already have like a halfway decent one. At least it was halfway decent like 5 years ago when I got the computer, but now it might not be halfway decent. I'm not sure. I don't know how it compares to the newer stuff, but computer technology updates so quickly, I couldn't even really figure that out, like how it would compare to nowadays. But yes, I have a few things that I wanted to talk about. I should probably also lower the BGM, because that's probably kind of loud, at least comparatively to my voice. I don't know, it's hard for me to tell when I'm just looking at the audio mixer. I don't have it like blaring into my headphones as well. I could have it set to monitor, but I don't, because that seems like it would get distracting. So there are a few things. Basically, I wanted to go over some things about how my brain works and how it's weird, because a lot of people have been, well, not a lot of people, I mean, I don't even really have a lot of people watching the stream, but at least a few people have taken notice and issue with the way that I do things. And there are very good explanations for such things. Well, at least to me, they're very good explanations. I don't know if anyone else's brain works like this, and thus I don't know if anyone else would actually relate to this. But basically, I'm also trying to figure out if I need a diagram for this. I did pull up MS Paint just in case I needed to draw diagrams. I probably do. Let me just let me. That's all I'm gonna say. Let's pull up the game thing. Window capture. paint. Let's see if this works. It works, okay. Yeah, I was having issues with the computer in general, so it even just window capturing is definitely something that I'm glad it can do. So here's paint. We have it. You can't really... Can you see my cursor? No, you cannot see my cursor. So that it's just going to be a surprise where I'm drawing, I guess. So this will be for diagrams, not really for... I am not an artist at all. Like, my artistic skills are... I mean, in real life, if I'm drawing on, like, an actual notebook with a pencil, I'm decent, I think. At least for, you know, someone who has never really taken art classes, or at least was never good at art classes. I'd say I'm pretty decent for someone who doesn't do that kind of thing. But on here, not so much. And I'm just drawing diagrams, so I don't need to be good at it. So first of all, the main issue I run into while streaming, that is still that. Let's see, was that Control Z? Yeah, Control Z apparently is undo. Okay, so circle. It looks a lot like this. This is the problem right here. It's a circle. Oh hey, you can see the mouse now. Oh, look at that. I just need to click on it a bit more. Okay, so we got a circle. This is the crux of the issue right here. Is my brain, at least when it, well, no, when it comes to pretty much everything, it works like this. It's a cycle. Which, you know, circles are generally cycle. It depends on the situation and the context, but a lot of circles are cycles. You know, you start at the top, you go around, you end up back at the top again. So the way that it works is, say at the very top you have MMOs. Yeah, that's right at the top. That is the first point that we're working with. And this is the gaming cycle. This is the important one. At least when it comes to streaming, at the very least. So, I know that everyone, to a degree, gets bored of games, but I don't know if it works the same way that mine works. Because I have seen people who can sit down and for like days, months, years in a row, just play the same game and stream it, and it just like, sure, they get burnt out, they get bored, but like they still play it. Like my dad, he has been playing WoW for like, I don't even know how long, at least a decade. And he still doesn't play like any other game. And to me, that is like unimaginable. I cannot see how anybody could do such a thing, because for me it goes beyond just getting bored of something, you know? It gets to the point where, you know, I'll explain the consequences of going against it after I actually explain what it is. So it's a gaming cycle. It's right there. You start with MMOs. The reason why you start with MMOs is because I always come back to them. Specifically Asheron's Call, sometimes WoW, but I'm always back to the MMO genre at one point or another. And actually recently I was kind of starting to feel like playing some Asheron's Call. But we're not quite there yet. We're not back to the start of the cycle. So then, it generally would go to strategy games. That's usually the second point. I mean, it switches up time after time. You know, every time the cycle goes around, it kind of changes up a bit. But usually I go MMOs to strategy games. You know, Age of Mythology, Age of Empires, StarCraft, StarCraft 2, any of that kind of stuff. I get really into them for a time. And then it moves along, and generally we go to like base building. So that would probably encompass things like Oxygen Not Included, RimWorld, that kind of stuff. Maybe even Minecraft. I don't know. Would that be, I guess that would be base building / survival. So yeah, that's kind of how it goes. Etc, etc, all the way around the entire cycle. And somewhere down here is productivity. So that it generally takes up a bit of a wedge right here. And what that means is basically that is the point where games, for whatever reason, are just anathema to me. Like, I just don't want to play games. That's kind of where I am right now. Of course, it depends, because there's also dead zones. So like this entire sequence here, like this wedge, would be then a dead zone where I don't feel like doing productive things like writing or coding, but I also don't feel like playing any games that I have. And that's a problem. So those happen quite often, and I could be in one of those right now as to why I don't feel like playing any of the games I own. But I also could be in the productivity phase, which would mean that I'm wanting to write, but the issue is, very stupidly, last time I wrote, I ended up allowing myself to get out of the productivity phase before finishing the project I was working on, which was a short story. And that kind of broke my brain, because now I don't want to write something else until I've finished that story, but I've also completely gotten out of, like, the mindset for that story, so I can't, like, I can't remember where I was and what I was doing when it comes to that. So it's very hard to get back into a story once you've left it for a significant amount of time. So I might be here, but not really able to do anything because I've completely gotten out of the mindset for that story, and I don't want to move on until I finished it. So I need to work on that. I need to get to that. It's very difficult, though. Hard to get back into it. Or I could, as I said, be in a dead zone where I just don't feel like playing anything or really being productive at all. It's just nothing. So that's how it goes. That is why sometimes I will spend like a week or two playing a game, like with WoW, where I spent, I don't know, was it 3 weeks or something? It was a good chunk of time that I was streaming WoW, and then I moved on, and then I think I played like Age of Empires or something. And then of course I went to Minecraft and all that other stuff, and then we're at today, which is somewhere in this region. So that is what happened, and that's why every like few weeks tops, generally every few days actually, I would switch from one game to another, is because the gaming cycle continues moving regardless of how I feel or what I want to do. This is just, it controls me. It is in my brain. It is how it works. And I can't explain it more than that. So if I were to try to go against this, you know, like somebody in chat is all upset, like, man, you were playing my favorite game and you never finished it. I'm upset. I don't know why the voice changed like 3 times in that one line, but you get the point. People get upset because I play a game that they like, they start watching it, and then I stop playing that game. And then they get upset because they're like, why aren't you playing that game anymore? I watched you because you were playing this game and now you're not. So now I'm butthurt about it. And I'm like, bro, the gaming cycle, it has demanded it. I am out of that section, and thus I cannot play that game anymore. That's just how it works. And I kind of feel like a lot of people don't have this, and so they don't know it. And you know, there's a lot of things I've seen where it's like, oh, to be successful in streaming, you need to like pick a niche or pick a genre and just stick with that. And I'm like, I can't do that. That my brain switches genres so very often. And now, if I were to go against it, if I were to give in to peer pressure and attempt to break this cycle by going backwards and staying at a point like base building, say people are really upset that I move on from Minecraft and they want to see more Minecraft, and I kind of put my hands in the gears and strain to push everything backwards and move the cycle back up to Minecraft, that is going to be painful. So let me explain what happens, what the consequences are of going backwards. Now, or even just staying stationary on something. So the first few days, it's fine, because I'm playing the game, I'm liking it, and then I start getting bored of it. Now, if I stay playing that game once I'm bored of it, it's generally still fine. I'll just kind of feel a bit down and be like, yeah, it's not really the game I want to be playing, but you know, I usually at that point I'm like, I have some gusto. I'm like, I need to get through this, you know, just a few more days of playing the game and I'll beat it. and it'll be great, and everyone will be happy. And then if I don't beat it within that time frame of the next couple days, I'll go on to the next section of the cycle. And that basically, not really cycle, I go to the next stage of grief, of trying to break the cycle. And usually that leads to depression. Basically, my mood takes a huge hit whenever I'm playing that game. I don't know why. It's like inexplicable. But if I like start up that game, my mind will just kind of start imploding and will not let me be happy playing it. And then you get to the next portion where it becomes an even bigger issue, where you're like, it almost, at a certain point, it becomes sickening to play the game. Like, literally, I have had times, I think it was when I was playing WoW, I was younger, and my dad was, like, controlling the subscriptions for the game. And so, with him controlling the subscriptions of the game, because I was a kid, it ended up a situation where I was basically forced to play it anytime I was over at his house, because it was the only game that we really played over there. And there were times where I would be playing the game, and some part of my brain is like, oh yeah, this is fun. It's entertaining. I'm playing a game that I, at some points, like. It's not like at any point I dislike these games. It's just not in the mood for them kind of thing. But there have been times where it's like, I will literally start to get like a stomach ache and start feeling nauseous and sick by trying to play a game outside of the cycle. And that's as far as I've ever gotten. I've never pushed through the sickness. And, because it's wholly uncomfortable. And as far as I know, that's where it ends. That's like, it's just, I stay at that point forever. I keep just feeling more and more sick, trying to force myself into doing something that my brain is so very against. So I am a slave to the gaming cycle. I cannot break it. It hurts so much if I do. So if anyone ever gets upset at me because I was playing one game and now I've moved on to playing the other game, or maybe I'm in a dead zone and I'm focusing more on writing, like if I'm in the productivity zone and I'm working on writing and coding and not actually streaming, that would be why. Just look back at this stream, this VOD. This is why. This is the culprit right here. Is because this cycle, it controls my every move. I can't break it. And so, I mean, I could try to break it. I definitely could. It just would not end well, especially because this is one of many cycles. My entire brain works cyclically. It's a hard word to say. So basically, there's the gaming cycle, then there's a cycle for like everything else. I was gonna write out like an entire food cycle, because that's also how my brain works, is I get bored of food, and then I don't want to eat food. Not like food in general, but like types of food. Like one day I might be really into sandwiches, which it happens. I have had sandwich cycles before where I'm just like, man, this, just having a nice Gouda and ham and mayo and some mustard sandwich, just absolutely best thing in the world. I want these every day. And then I do. I have them like every day for a week. And then I move on. And then I'm like, man, cereal is the most delectable treat in the world. I want cereal every morning. And then like a week after that, I'm like, nah, I don't want cereal anymore. That just is not palatable to me. So I don't know if that's normal, that everything runs in cycles, that something that I liked a week ago can be unbearable to me now, a week later. I don't know if that's normal. But to me, it's normal, And it might be the same thing that everyone goes through, but just sped up and put into like a really fast motion where people will get bored of games eventually, but, oh, 1 second. Okay, just something I had to take care of for a second. But yeah, as I was saying, it might just be that in my brain it's all very sped up, where someone could spend like a few months being addicted to a game and then they move on from it. And for me, those few months will go by in like a week or so tops. I think the longest I've ever spent playing a singular game was when I was playing WoW in Burning Crusade. It was. Well, Burning Crusade Classic, not the original Burning Crusade release, because I was pretty young then. I do remember it though. I remember I had a Draenei Hunter. I don't know if they're even still around anymore, but I remember them distinctly. Anyways, in Burning Crusade Classic, though, I was basically really dedicated to playing it. Here, we're not really using the diagrams right now. I'm just going to go back to the chatting window. Not that there's much more to see here, but it's, I think, at least a bit hurts your eyes less because the big white paint screen isn't up. It's a very bright screen. Anyways, yeah, so I was playing Burning Crusade Classic, and I was very dedicated because I was like, you know what? We have never done WoW raiding before because of the cycle. Honestly, I have never gotten to endgame content in most games because the cycle forces me off of that game before I reach, you know, the zenith of the gameplay. So that is always an issue. So in WoW, it's like, yeah, I've never gotten to raiding, except for once in retail, I think in Pandaria it was, and that was only for a long enough time for me to do a few raids in Look for Raid, which isn't really even proper raiding. That's just, it's like Dungeon Finder, just with a larger group of people. So I did that for a time, and that was not very fun. I mean, I did get good loot. To be fair, I don't know if I got legendaries. I don't know. At certain points in retail, they're just throwing legendaries at you. But I think it was just really like epic items, and I got a ton of them, and it was pretty great. But then I got bored of it and stopped. But in Burning Crusade Classic, I was like, you know what? We're doing this. We're pushing through. This is our one chance. You know, Burning Crusade Classic has just come out just recently. And the raiding scene, if I can just get up there within like a couple weeks, it'll be hot. The raiding scene will be very hot, and everyone will be raiding, and finding a raid group will be easy, and I'll be able to do raids every week, maybe even more if I have like multiple characters. It's gonna be great. So I make my character a hunter, which is my favorite class in WoW, and I just start leveling up. And it takes me quite some time because, you know, even though Burning Crusade is significantly easier than vanilla, it was still a long process. So I take the time and I put in the effort. I get the character from 0, like just making the character, all the way up to, I think, level 67 or 68. And at that point, it had been, you know, after all that time, I'd been doing leveling, professions, dungeons, you know, finding a guild, this, that, the other. I had done so much. And I was a few levels away from max, where I could start farming the gear, get raid ready, and it would all be within like 2 months of it opening. And so the raiding scene would still be super strong. And so that was my dedication. That was why I was so like pushing through the gaming cycle to try to get this done, is because I've never done it before. And unfortunately, after about a month and a half since I'd started playing it, and after probably 2.5 to 3 weeks after I had moved on from the game, like gaming cycle wise, it became too much. I gave up at level 67 or 68, just a few levels away from max, where I mean, to be fair, I still had weeks of effort ahead of me to get raid ready. Like, I need the potions, I need the gear, I need this, that, the other. But at least I would have been closer, you know? But I ended up giving up because it just became too much. The feeling of sickness, the just depression, the everything, that every time I tried to start up the game, it hurt. I didn't like it. And games are supposed to be fun, so at a certain point I was like, you know what, screw it. I don't need to raid. I'm not a raider. That's not what I do. So I gave up, and I threw in the towel, and I'd stopped playing WoW for a while. And by the time I came back to it, they were looking at frickin' Wrath of the Lich King Classic. It'd been that long, and the raiding scene in Burning Crusade was as cold as could be at that point, because everyone was excited to move on to, you know, Wrath of the Lich King, and I was sitting there still like, man, I still prefer vanilla the best. I wish anyone was playing it. And so it was painful. I never did end up getting around to raiding. And I may never, you know, I might end up dying without ever really being part of a WoW raid group, because this cycle, it just doesn't give enough time, you know? There's not enough time to get that much done. And raiding, it's a long-term commitment. It's something you don't only need to put in like 2 months of effort to level the character and get all their gear and potions and everything, but also then once a week you need to log back in to do the raid every week with the guild. And that is a dedication that I most certainly can't do, because that would end up just being way too much. I mean, I get bored probably the least of my favorite game, Asheron's Call, and even that, I can't force myself to log in once a week to, you know, make sure the house bill is paid, because in Asheron's Call they still have, like, you know, monthly house maintenance and all that. I can't log in every week to make sure I've gotten the Og gem from Sir Bellis, or, you know, got the stipend from Arwick, you know? It's like, I can't do those things. It's not how my brain works. You know, I'm the kind of person that puts everything that they possibly can on autopay, so I don't have to worry about it again, you know? And it's anathema to me. I can't do that. So yeah, that was basically a long-winded explanation of the gaming cycle, as to, you know, if anyone ever gets upset at me for playing a game and then stopping playing a game shortly thereafter, like a few days, it's the gaming cycle's fault. I am prisoner to the cycle, and it just keeps moving. And right now, as I said, I'm in like a dead zone or a productivity cycle, which either one of those makes it so playing games is difficult. That's why I'm here not playing a game, because I'd have no idea what I would even enjoy playing at this point. I do want to get back to Azaric once this dead zone is through, no matter what I'm feeling like playing, because, you know, Azaric is one of those things that I don't think is very genre specific, so I can kind of force myself through that no matter what point in the gaming cycle I'm at. And I really need to beat that, because I swear, if I go another like few years without ever beating that game, I'm gonna lose my mind. Like, it has been so long, so very long since I actually managed to, you know, well, not since I managed to beat the game, because we never have, but since we played it last, we've just never beaten it, and I need to do that. It's like a vendetta. I can't live with myself if I don't eventually beat that game, because we were so close, just one fragment of the life disc away, and I can do that. I just need to keep at it. But anyways, I will be getting back to Azaric most likely, hopefully, and then hopefully I'll finish that and beat it, and the vendetta will be over, and then I can move on with my life. But that's gonna be like alongside any other games that I'm playing and other stuff that I'm doing. But yes, let's see. Oh yeah, continuing on with weirdness in brain, another odd one, which I have no idea why it does this, but it's less of a cycle and more of a pendulum, where, you know, I experienced this yesterday, and I kind of experience it every day. It just to what degree, it depends. But yesterday, specifically, you know, I went places, talked to people, had a real good time, you know, chatting with friends. We went and got some pho, or at least my friends got pho, I got the pad thai, but it was really good, very good stuff. And then we came home, we played some games, And then later in the day, after they left, I played games with them again online, played some Lethal Company with them. Very good game, very fun time. And so all in all, you'd think, oh yeah, it's a good day. That's a fun day. Very nice. But what's mystifying is that in the evening of that day, I ended up like hitting this huge depressive spike. And now that is the pendulum that I'm talking about. Is basically anytime I have a really good morning, so it pushes the pendulum all the way to the happiness side. For whatever reason, by the end of the day, that pendulum is going to swing all the way back over, and inexplicably, I'm going to have a super bad night. Like, not that the events of the night are going to be bad, just that my brain is going to be super down in the dumps for no good reason. So if I have a really good morning, I have a really bad night. And the opposite is also true. If I have a really crappy morning, I end up like ecstatic by nighttime. I don't know why. It's like I could have the most depressing day possible, and by night I'll be, you know, pretty dang happy, or just upbeat for no good reason. And I don't know what that's about. I've never known what that's about, but that's just how it is. Luckily, I've gotten it more under control. It used to be that it would just kind of happen randomly, and I would just, like, even random stupid things would just put me in a horrible mood instantly, and then I would end up feeling better later in the day. But it's a very weird thing, and that pendulum, I've never understood it. And it's weird because, like, you know, this morning could possibly, I guess, be construed as good because I'm talking about stuff. I like talking. That's mainly why people become streamers, because they like talking. And it's like, you know, if this could be construed as good, then all the goodness in the day will be crammed into this one portion of the day, and then the rest of the day is gonna suck. I don't know how that works. I don't know why that is, but it just is. It's the reality of the situation, and I can't change that. At least I don't think I can. So, who knows? My brain is full of cycles and pendulums, and also writing. A lot of writing. That's like probably at least 80% of my brain power goes to writing. I mean, I haven't been doing a ton of it, like, physically lately, but definitely I've been doing it in my brain still, because that's how writing goes for me. A lot of writers, at least as far as I can tell, they, like, dedicatedly sit down and are like, all right, I want this story about space aliens and how they, you know, we need a good protagonist, and they'll have these traits, and we need a good antagonist, and they'll do this, and then that's what the moral of the story is going to be, this, and it's going to be great. In my brain, it doesn't work like that. It's, you know, it's a very simple way of doing it to me. So for me, it all happens kind of just naturally, which it's always done that. Even back when I was a kid and I was just playing with, like, Legos, my brain would come up with intricate stories of, like, oh yeah, this color of Lego is this faction, and they have these traits and these powers, and they're going up against this other faction, you know, and this is, like, their storyline, and this is who they are and why they are and what they stand for, and they're gonna fight over this issue or problem or moral dilemma, and then I do that. And it's all just freaking Legos, like, you know, like everyone else is kind of like Patrick in that one episode where there was the shrunken Squidward, where they're just like, they pick up Legos and they just mess around with them, and they're like, here comes the giant fist. Like, in my brain, it doesn't work like that. Like, what faction does the giant fist belong to? Where did it come from? Why does it exist? By what logic does it function? What are its powers? Like, it's just, that's why I've never been good at playing with other people when it comes to, like, imagination-based games like Legos. I could never get along with my siblings with that, because in my mind, their imagination is just nonsensical. So, it's kind of the same thing with writing. It's like playing with Legos in my brain, is that I have a singular universe, because I can't seem to break away from it. Every time I try to make another universe, it gets, like, enveloped inside the universe again, and gets plugged into the canon in a way that it makes it fit. Like everything I try to make that branches off just ends up fitting somehow because it all runs on my logic, the same logic. So obviously all of it would somehow interconnect. So it's basically like what happens is I listen to things. Either I read books, which I don't do all that often because they just kind of like I read a chapter and then it puts me in the mood to write, and then I stop reading and I start writing, which maybe that's what I need. Maybe I need to read more so I feel like writing more. I don't know. But anytime I read something, I end up imagining my own books and my own stories, and they just pop into my head and they play out. Same with music. Pretty much all music I listen to like has lyrics and storyline and emotions tied to it. And that's because whenever I listen to music, I always envision a similar setting or scene from my books that have like a similar emotional feeling to it, or a similar je ne sais quoi, you know? So it's very odd because that's how I write, is I listen to music and that makes me play through a certain character's like backstory or fight scene or something or other over and over and over and over, and by repetition, just over, you know, weeks and months, I end up like making this character as intricate and as, you know, fleshed out as can be because I just contemplate them for so very long. I never sit down and I'm like, I'm gonna make this character and they're gonna do this, because that just happens naturally. They just are who they are based on who they become through what I think of them, and then they just do the things they do because of who they are. It all just follows like the logical train of events, you know, from that base character. And that's actually how my first book started, was years ago. Back, I think I was like 13, maybe even younger, maybe like 11 at the time. And I ended up making my first character, who was the main character of the first book series I ever started trying to write. And this character was very like generic right off the bat. Extremely, I mean, I was young. I was not big brain at that point, very smooth brain. But the character was generic and not fleshed out, and basically I started talking to them. It was like one of those things where when you're a kid, I guess closest thing I could equate it to would be an imaginary friend kind of thing, but they were a fleshed out character at a certain point when I was just, I would just think them up and I would talk to them, and I would get their backstory and who they are, where they came from, why they do what they do, all from them. I would talk to them. They become like a personality inside my brain that I talk to directly. And I can still do it. Even the same original character, the first one, she's still up here, and I can still just pull her out at a moment's notice and be like, hey, what's up? And then my brain can naturally formulate in her personality a response to that input. You know, it's almost like I have AI chatbots just in my brain that I can access at any given moment. So, and that's even what the Archivist is. You know, this weirdo on screen is basically an AI chatbot that I'm speaking through. Now, it's pretty easy to act as the Archivist because his personality is the character that he's the character that has the personality closest to mine. It's the one that I don't need to alter very much at all. But you know, all the other characters are quite varied and different. They still have my personality as like the basic premise. You know, if you boiled down every character's personality, you would end up with my personality at the very root of it. But they have different like traits that are stronger, traits that are weaker, and all that kind of stuff. But yes, so the stories, as I said, I talk to the characters sometimes, or at least I used to talk to the characters, and I would flesh out the story from there. And then in my brain, I can listen to music and do other things and think over those same situations over and over, and it fleshes it out into a full storyline eventually. it takes a long time. It's a process, you know. It's not the kind of thing that you can just, or at least I can just think up a story in like one afternoon and all of a sudden it's fully fleshed out. Like, I can think of a premise for a story in an afternoon, but I still need to get acquainted with the characters, the setting, the, you know, what the culture is like, who the people are, what the, you know, just everything, all the ins and outs. There's a lot of details that go into each story that takes a long time to flesh out. But it eventually does. I eventually get it. And that's kind of the issue, though, is that it takes time. And I don't always have time. But luckily I have, like, I don't know, at least 10 different stories that I'm waiting to write that are all just swirling around inside my brain that I need to get on paper, but I'm freaking lazy or something and I can't do it. And the productivity portion of the gaming cycle hasn't come around, or when it does, I'm not, like, in a position to act on it. So I need to get around to that, is what I'm saying. I've been putting a lot of effort into getting myself to stream pretty much every day, as often as I can. And sometimes that's easy. When I'm, like, really into a game, it's really easy to get to streaming. Like, when I was playing Mountain Blade, and I would play casually for, like, 4 hours a day, it's like, that was easy for me. Because I was looking forward to waking up each day and doing more Mountain Blade, where it's like, yeah, we're gonna get on this horse and ride into that enemy group and kill them all. And then, we're, you know, that's one battle, and we go and do it again and again for like 4 hours, and then we win. But then at a certain point, that kind of got soft locked because I had like 2 cities and 2 castles or something. Or no, 3 cities, 2 castles. And then the enemy ended up, like, I think we were turned against by like 3 different nations at once. And I was trying to fight them all off with just a few cities and castles. And by the end, I didn't stream the last part because I was trying to do it off camera to try to get things under control, because all it was me sitting in a castle or a city defending it for like 10 battles in a row, where I would win 10 sieges in a row and eventually get them to have enough casualties to eventually back off. Or I could finally, like, sally out because I have more units than them and take out their forces and win. And sure, that would work. And if I was only fighting one nation, I would have been on top. Like, I'd just take out their biggest army, you know, by defending my own city. Their army's dead, I capture all their people, I discuss peace with them, they give me tribute, everyone's happy. But when you have 3 people against you, things get complicated. Because then you're getting hit at multiple locations simultaneously by all their biggest armies, you can't defend them all. And then you're down to 1 city, which is how it was at the end there, is I had 1 city left, which I think was Tial. I think that was the last city I had. And it was under attack by the Kuzites, who were right there. Like, you know, their army, or their castles were like one of the closest settlements to my city. And that's a problem, because their armies just kept hopping over and attacking me. And the Kuzites are huge, and they're really dangerous. Luckily, they're not great at sieges, because their main strength is cavalry. So I was doing fine there, but really, no matter how many sieges I won, they would just come back with a bigger army, and then I had everyone else on my back too. Like, I had an empire, and I think the Battanians, or maybe the Vlandians. It's been a while. I can't remember. But it was crazy. It was like, you can't do that to me. That's way too many enemies. How is that fair at all? Where's the diplomacy system? So yeah, every time I bring up Mountain Blade 2, I always get upset, because I'm like, why do they not have a diplomacy system? The diplomacy system is literally, I pay tribute to you, I don't like it, me kill you. That's it. That's the entire system. And even, like, I think I expressed this multiple times while playing the game, but I would get so upset because it's like, bro, I literally married the son of the Battanian king. And yet Battanians are like, oh yes, you may be married to the prince, but I'm still gonna kill you. Like why? Why would you go to war with the nation that literally has a direct marriage alliance with you? That's not how that works. So then that always puts me in the mood to play like what's it? Crusader Kings 3, that's the name of it. Because Crusader Kings 3, it doesn't have like the best combat system. I always criticize the game mostly for like the combat, because it's literally just like, I mean, you know Risk? It's like that. Where you just a little bit more nuanced than Risk, where you have, you know, the dice rolls to fight the other person's forces, but then you just add in a bunch of variables like the land you're on, the unit types you have, the, you know, the how apt your leader is, or your general is. And it's like all of that adds into the fighting and who wins, but at the same time it's like it's just not really, you know, dynamic. There's not a lot you can do about it. Skill doesn't play too much a part in combat, except for, you know, when you're formulating your army and how many like archers, cavalry, and infantry you're gonna have, and what types, and how much money you're willing to spend on your military funding. And then I guess skill also comes into how much money you can make, and thus how many people you can hire as the men-at-arms to actually make your army usable. And additionally, like in the late game, or I guess even in the early game, if you're fighting a big enough you know, kingdom, you end up at a point where you're just throwing levies at each other. That men-at-arms can like kind of turn the tide a bit, but when you get to the point where each army has thousands and thousands of levies, you'd have to spend a small fortune in order to match even a percentage of the strength of the levies with man-at-arms. So I usually play Crusader Kings 3 with a mod that I think it's just called Less Levies, where you get like a few levies per town, and, you know, certain things like a barracks, instead of giving you like 100 extra levies at level 1, it just gives you like 10. And so you end up still, the levies are very important because they're like free man-at-arms essentially. But by that point, with that mod, really the strength of everybody's armies is determined by how much military spending they're doing. And that's a lot more realistic than just, hey, let's conscript like thousands and thousands of fodder units and not train them like pretty much at all and just throw them at each other. You know, like professional armies were a thing, you know, and sure, I know in like feudal times especially, there was a lot of untrained armies going at each other, but generally, I would say throughout history, while levies did play a part, you know, like in the Less Levies mod, you know, there's still levies in there, but the main like fighting force would be a professional army that actually, you know, are well trained, well equipped, you know, paid for by the king or the state or whatever is running it. Maybe in the church, I don't know, it depends on what point in history you're talking about. And so it always upset me. So I always get Less Levies, that mod, because it's nice. Although my main issue that comes up with Crusader Kings 3, even though I love that game, it's a great game, especially with the diplomacy system, how you can like actually have marriage alliances and all that good stuff. It's fun. It's a good time. But my biggest qualm with it is like, I mean, it's gonna sound weird, but they keep updating it. I mean, that's usually a good thing, right? Like, updates are good. I like updates, and it gives us new, you know, materials, new content, but the issue comes in when you're using a heavily modded save file, and the game keeps updating, then you have to make a choice. Because either you update with it, and you get rid of any you know, mods that haven't updated or that aren't getting updated anymore because they're like, you know, the person who made it isn't working on it anymore, or you try to like stay back and just keep using the same format, but eventually all of your mods are going to update, or at least the ones that are still being worked on are going to update past that point. So then like half of your mods are updated to the newer version and the other half aren't, and so then you lose mods that might be like integral to your playstyle, and you obviously need to like restart the game because you're moving up to a completely different, expansion of the game with different mods and everything, so it's completely incompatible with the old save file, so you end up restarting like a ton of times. But yeah, it's a whole to-do, and once again, I appreciate that they update it. I like a lot of the new content they bring in, but it does cause issues when you're playing with a lot of mods, because you're like, man, I need to like spend like 2 hours redoing my entire mod list every time an update comes out, and then I need to like start a new game when I come into the game again, because all the other save files are now incompatible. So it's a process, but that's kind of what you get when you use mods. It's what happens. Anyways, I've ranted about Crusader Kings 3 long enough. I don't even remember how I got here. I think I was talking about Mountain Blade and was using Crusader Kings to, make a counterpoint about how games can have good diplomacy, but then how it has bad fighting. Oh yeah, there's that one mod that I haven't checked on it in a while, because I haven't been back to Crusader Kings 3 in some time, but I would play so much Crusader Kings 3 if this mod was actually up to date. But I don't remember what it was called. I think it was like Crusader Lord? Banner Kings? It was some combination of Banner Lord and Crusader Kings. Some mishmash of those two names. And that mod, I've never played it before, because as long as I've known of the mod, it's been outdated. And I've tried going back to an earlier version of the game, like using the Steam betas thing to kind of roll back the game to the point when that mod was supposed to work, and I got the mod and I tried it. It just wasn't compatible anymore. Somehow, I'm guessing the mod worked at one point, it just didn't anymore, and it was very sad. Because what that mod does is basically you play Crusader Kings 3 normally, all the way up until you have a combat sequence, at which point the mod takes all the settings and all the, it takes your army size and composition, their army size and composition, and inputs those into, Mountain Blade 2 Bannerlord, and makes a custom battle of that. And then you fight that battle with, actual skill and strategy on the strategy map, and you can win that. You can have like very few losses because you actually use your archers smartly, and it's not just a risk style dice roll every time. And then after the battle's done, after you've inevitably won because you're awesome, it then takes the outcome of that battle, how many units you lost, how many units they lost, and all that, and transports it back into Crusader Kings 3, inputs all those stats, and that's the outcome of the battle. And so it's kind of awesome, and I've really been wanting to see that mod come back and be, updated for the newest version of the game. But as I said, I haven't looked at it in a while. It might be updated right now, and I'm missing the window to play it while it's up to date. But for the last long while, whenever I looked at it again, it hadn't really been updated in a long time. It seems like they're not working on it currently, and I think that might be because Crusader Kings keeps getting updates so regularly. It's like, how can they keep up with that? I think they're waiting for things to settle out a bit, and then they might come back to it. Or maybe they're just done with it entirely, and someone else will need to pick up the torch and keep running with it. So I don't know how that's going to go, but I'm very excited about that mod. Whenever that comes back, someone should let me know, because I'm going to play the heck out of that. Because, once again, Crusader Kings 3, very good game. Combat is really the only, downside to the game that I have ever seen. It's quite amazing. And it's so moddable. Like, even I, with just my rudimentary coding skills, have been able to go into the source files of the game and been like, man, there's this really dumb mechanic that I don't like. Let me just change that. I'm just gonna find in the files where that number is decided, and I'm gonna change it. Like that thing, what was the thing? It was... What was it? What's the word for that? Attrition. That's it. So there's an attrition system in Crusader Kings 3, and basically I don't remember exactly how it works, but I think if you're not in your own territory or you haven't stopped at one of your own cities in a while, your guys will just start dropping like flies because I guess they ran out of food or something. I don't know how exactly that works, but either way, eventually you take attrition damage, and it kills off so many men. I think when I was playing it, and I had like an army of 700 units or something, mostly man-at-arms, because once again, I was playing with the less levies mod, so all of these guys were like man-at-arms, and every turn, when I was trying to move around, it was, well, I guess it's not really turns, it's just days, and then it takes a certain number of days to move, but you move turn-wise because it takes a certain amount of time to move, and they move in like big chunks, so I kind of count them as just turns. So, but every time you would move, every turn, you would lose like 100 units or something, or like 50 to 100 units, depending on how many units you have total. And it was like, it was absolutely crazy because, I mean, I guess it might be balanced around most of these supposed to be levies, you know, because losing like 50 to 100 levies, generally that's fine. Generally, you know, you can handle that. But, or no, I think it was that 100 or something was like the minimum, that it had a minimum number of attrition units you could lose. And it was like 50 or 100. And for an army of like 800 units, you are losing like 1/8 of your entire army's strength every turn. And as I mentioned, a lot of those were man-at-arms because I had the less levies mod. So I was losing like 100 men-at-arms per time I moved outside of my own territory. And that just was not sustainable. So what I did is I went into the settings, and it took me a while, you know, in the game files themselves to find the attrition stats and like what the code runs on, what it determines what the attrition damage does every turn. And so I found that eventually. It took me like half an hour, but I found it, and I edited it. And all I did was change the like 100 minimum troops to lose during attrition to 10. Because it turns out that the formula for attrition is actually really generous. And so I was like, man, if this was actually doing what it was supposed to be doing, I would be losing like 5 units per turn to attrition, because the formula would just add up that way. But because they had a minimum of 100 or whatever the number was, I was losing like 20 times the units per turn that I was supposed to based on the formula. So I moved it. I changed the minimum to 10. So, you know, because that's actually acceptable losses for attrition per turn. You know, I can actually survive that for a time with my, you know, general army size. And that fixed the issue entirely, you know, and that's what I appreciate about games like that, where you can just go into the code, where if something isn't fun, or if something isn't, you know, suiting your playstyle, you can just go in there and edit it, you know, as long as you somewhat know what you're doing. And, you know, it's the same exact thing with RimWorld. RimWorld is just as moddable as, you know, Crusader Kings, maybe even more, because I have had situations, a lot of situations, where I'll go into the source files of RimWorld or any RimWorld mod and just be like, you know what, this limiter on it, this minimum, this maximum, I don't like it, I'm gonna get rid of it. Or even sometimes where I'm like, hey, there are these items that are uncraftable in these, you know, situations, let me make those craftable. So I'll actually like go and find an existing recipe in the game files and copy that, and then just replace all of the keywords to the other item I'm wanting to be able to create. And that has been, you know, very useful. Because a more specific example was when I was playing with the craftable Architect replacements mod, which makes it so you can make like Architect limbs and stuff, all the vanilla Architect parts, but it didn't include any of the modded Architect parts, like Architect lungs, Architect, well no, there wasn't an Architect brain, but an Architect jaw, Architect everything, you know, liver, organs, bones, I don't care. Any item that is part of the body, that mod had an Architect replacement for it. but the craftable mod that made them actually be able to be crafted didn't include any of those. So I had to copy copy a recipe from the craftable architect replacements mod and paste it multiple times, and then fill in all of the necessary information to change, like, being able to craft an arm into a copied recipe where I can now craft a lung, and it worked. It worked perfectly. Except I think it did kind of throw up errors in the oh, it's not a change log. The log that tells you when things are going wrong, it did throw up like a bunch of errors in that. But it worked fine. And in coding, so long as it works fine, you ignore the errors. At least that's how I do it. So it went well. And that's why I like those games, where you can just kind of mod them freely and do whatever the heck you want, because, I was sitting there like, man, having to constantly wait for every town on this planet to reset their stock, and then use that mod that makes it so you can look at the stock of every single town on the planet using your comms console, and filter by architect parts, and them being excellent quality and above, and then just hoping every 30-day period, I think, is the vanilla reset time for towns. So every 30 days you open up that window, look through, and sometimes there are just no parts available, and you're just like, man, that really puts a damper on the mood. Like, I'm gonna need to wait another 30 days before I can get a single other part for one of my people. And it sucked, because I only wanted the good architect stuff, because I was trying to make absolutely invincible mechanoid monstrosities out of my colonists, and that just isn't practical when you're doing it that way. So the craftable thing, quite useful, because then I could just have someone who's like at 18 crafting skill out here pumping out masterwork architect bionics like nobody's business. And of course they were super expensive to make, they're architect, of course they would be, but it was fun. It was good times, and I could actually make a full set of we need new architect legs here. Let's make a bunch of excellent architect legs and bring our movement speed up to 400%. It's just amazing. I love it. I think I even had some people by the end, because of all the mods that I had, that they could move around at 1,000% speed, because they're just absolutely overpowered. And you know how useful that is in melee, to just be able to run up to someone within 0.2 seconds. They see you, you get in their gun's range, you move at 1,000% speed, instantly you're just right up their butt attacking them with melee. It is game changing. They can get maybe one bullet out of their gun before you're meleeing them, and then they instinctively, they don't fire guns at melee range for some reason, so they just start hitting you, pistol whipping you, and you're just, you have architect power arms that can literally in Cyberpunk 2077, how they have those arms that can just pull giant scythes out of them and just slice things. Yeah, it's pretty much what the architect power arms can do. They go in, you have 3 different attacks where it's blunt, piercing, or slashing, and it does a random one of those, and each one of those does 40 damage baseline. So if you have an excellent quality one, then you're doing 50, 60 damage, and a human torso usually only has 40 health or something. So if you get through their armor, which it has 100% armor penetration, you can just one-shot someone if you hit a vital organ or their torso or something. It's amazing. That's my favorite thing to do in RimWorld, is just you make horrors beyond human comprehension and set them loose on all of your enemies, and laugh as they all melt away. But you have one superhuman going up against 50 tribals, and you just win, because not only are they running around one-shotting people with the power arms, but they're also shooting giant laser beams out of their eyes, because you have the psycasts expanded. It's I think it's kind of like a power fantasy thing. Where I'm just I play this game to be so utterly powerful in the face of a brutal and unforgiving game that it just makes me feel good, because I can just go in there and kill everything and be awesome. So that's how I do that. I never got to that point when I was streaming RimWorld because once again, you know, gaming cycle, it pushed me out of RimWorld far faster than, you know, I could actually get to that point, because that takes like 30 hours of in-game time sometimes to get to that point where you're just you reach that critical mass of bionics and nothing can stop you ever again. I mean, even then, you know, like, it's funny because I get all these mods to make myself more and more powerful, and you'd think, oh, well then that's, you know, that's it. You've just gotten powerful and now you're unstoppable. But at the same time, I'm, you know, I don't want it to get too easy. So then I get late game mods like, I think it's like the Blue Corporation or something, or no, Blue Moon Corporation, that was it. And that was like, I think it's a mod that just adds that corporation. They all have like Glitter World tech. Actually, that might just be part of a Glitter World tech mod. But yeah, they're like super high-end mercenaries that come and try to kill you, and they just have like, you know, performance boosting drugs or mechanites in their system from the time they land. They don't even need to like ingest it, they just start with it. So they're already better than normal people, and they're wearing like glitter tech marine armor or like phoenix armor or whatever. And they have these giant guns, some of which are like sniper rifles that can shoot you from half the map away, or bullet storms that shoot like a bullet every 0.2 seconds. So you just get peppered with them, and no matter how much armor you have, eventually one of those bullets will get through your armor and you'll be hurting. So it's amazing. And so I get all these high-end enemy mods, you know, where you get bigger insects, stronger mechanoids, better human enemies. Like, you get to that point, and then all my bionics are like, oh, well, these are good enough to fight this, but just barely. You know, like, you're gonna be struggling still. There's still gonna be points where your character's gonna be, you know, either downed by pain shock if you don't have a pain stopper on them, or possibly sometimes they'll lose certain vital organs because they don't have enough health, and they'll just end up dying from that, and you'll need to bring them back with like mechanoid serum or something. So it still has some challenge to it at a certain point, even if you get past that critical mass of bionics, which is always the goal for me. I need those bionics. And you know, this started so early on in my RimWorld journey. I remember distinctly, this was like years ago, back when I first started RimWorld, but there was a guy, one single character. This was back when I didn't like obsessively make very specific characters every time I play RimWorld, because I've now gotten attached to like a core cast of RimWorld characters that I always play with. But you know, back then I would just start with random characters and accept anybody who walks in who was halfway decent. You know, I was a RimWorld noob, and I was just taking whatever came my way, and I didn't heavily mod the game yet. Actually, I think back at that point I was pretty much vanilla. So yeah, it was interesting. And there was this one dude, I don't remember his name, but I remember he was the hulking body type, and you know, this was back in regular RimWorld, so he was just a baseline human, no genetic stuff going on there. And he was in a fight. You know, I had my little village, my little town, and I had probably 5 people, maybe less, and there was a raid. One of the enemies had a shotgun in the raid, and this dude, this absolute Giga Chad, runs up to that enemy, gets shot, and that one shot, as he was running up to the enemy, took off his left leg. Like, the entire leg. It was just gone. But he somehow, like the Giga Chad he was, he ran up to the guy with one leg, somehow just hopped his way up there, beat the crap out of the guy, just with his melee weapon. He just beat the guy down, and then managed to walk himself to a hospital bed and lie down. And it's like, that was my first moment where I was like, this guy, he's gonna go far. I like this guy. So I patch him up, and later in the game, I get him a bionic leg. And then I realize, man, this bionic leg is actually slightly better than his old leg. Because I think baseline bionic legs aren't better, but I might have had a bionic mod at that point. I don't know. But either way, it was either as good as his old leg or better. And I was like, man, if this guy keeps losing limbs, he'll just be a superhuman at a certain point. You know, I'll just keep replacing all his missing parts with bionic parts, and he'll just be invincible. And that's what was the catalyst of this obsession to make superhuman bionic monstrosities, was that dude that just lost a leg and kept fighting. And I was like, I want every character to be that awesome, and every fight to be like that, where they just they take a million hits and lose everything, but keep fighting and end up winning and walking themselves to the hospital bed. Like, I want all my characters to be like him, because that was fun. So that's where the addiction started. That's where it all began. And now I can't break it, because that's all I do in RimWorld anymore, is just everything I start, you know, I might go into it like, I want to do a rancher game this time where I raise animals, and that'll be where I get my money from. But every time I use that money, no matter where I'm getting the money from, whether it's Devil Strand or raising sheep or pigs or cows or whatever animals I'm ranching at that time, it's no matter what, I always spend that money I get on bionics, as many architect bionics as I can muster, and that's just how it goes. And then I need a good doctor and a good melee person, and I put the bionics on the melee person. That's, you know, and just rinse and repeat. Every single playthrough I've ever done since that point has just been that same formula, and it's a blast. I love it. So, except recently, where I got SOS 2, which is like the space mod, and even though it was like super buggy and kept crashing at times, it got less buggy when I updated it again, because I guess they did a lot of updates for it, and it got less laggy, less buggy, worked a lot better. But overall, it was great. I had a good time with it, and the SOS 2 mod, very fun. And I did still end up getting bionics on that, of course. You know, you can't be in space with a bunch of people on a mega destructive platform with a giant spinal railgun, you know, without having some architect bionic monstrosities running around doing it. Because, like, how am I gonna build this thing in any decent amount of time without someone who can run at like 500% speed and work at 300% speed? Like, I don't think I could do it. Like, it's a big project. You need strong players to do that. So yeah, it was very nice. But then it kept crashing. And then I kept trying to play it, because I updated it, and then I started a new game, and for whatever reason, I couldn't find this, like, a solution to this anywhere online. But I ran into, I don't know if it was a bug or just, I don't know if it's just weird game design, but every enemy I'd come across, you know, I'm in space, I have my ship, it has a few guns, you know, I'd started over, so it was a small ship with only a few people on it and a few guns active, and for whatever reason, every single enemy that showed up would run immediately. They wouldn't even try to fight me or try to get in range. Even pirates that just show up and they're like, "Arg, we're gonna kill you and take all your money," they just take one look at me, see my starter ship, and they turn around and start retreating immediately. Like, no second thought about it. And so I don't know if that's a bug. It's probably a bug, because I wasn't able to fight anyone in any other, you know, save file I did past that point. So it was probably one of my other mods conflicting, maybe, with the newer version of that mod. I don't know. But, you know, when you mod stuff that heavily, you've got to expect that there's going to be some conflict in mods and files and how things work, and generally it's not game breaking, but there, you know, I could do everything on my own ship, everything else worked fine. It's just, and even like derelicts would come up, and I could go to the derelicts and fight through them and capture portions of them to break down and make my ship better. But why make the ship better if I'm never gonna fight anyone? Like, if everybody that shows up is like, "Oh no, that's that guy, run." Like, bro, I'm literally in a half beaten up cargo ship that I've retrofitted to have a couple guns on it. Like, why are you so scared of me? You have a spinal laser that with, like, I mean, it only has a few amplifiers, but still, that's a full frickin' spinal laser. I have like 3 railguns, and not even the big ones, like the small railguns. Why are you running from me? And I mean, sure, I'm glad, because they would have certainly killed me, but I'm just saying, it's very kind of concerning. Like, that's not supposed to happen. So it was no fun, and I ended up stopping playing it. Next time I get around to it, I'll probably switch around the mod pack a bit, see if, you know, and of course update the mods to their newest version, see if any of that's fixed. But I'm not back to RimWorld just yet, so we'll get around to that. That's probably back at the base building portion of the cycle, right? That'd be base building / survival. That's kind of what RimWorld is. I don't know. It might be also with strategy games, because there's a lot of strategy to do those kinds of things. So I don't know. I'll have to get back to that eventually and figure out if I can see what the issue was with that SOS2 mod, because it was really fun and I want to play it again. But if it keeps bugging out and I can't fight anyone, then what's the point, you know? So that is that. So yeah, cycles, not fun. That's pretty much what I came here to say. And then I went off on a tirade about a bunch of other things. But yeah, gaming cycle. But basically blame that anytime I just stop playing a game randomly. It's the gaming cycle. It's not my fault. It's its fault. I'm just gonna shift all the blame onto it, because it sucks. And I wish it would go away. Because, you know, I on some level, I wish I was one of those people that could just play, you know, some random competitive first-person shooter for years on end to try to get, like, the highest rank, or to get really skilled at it, or, you know, to be able to stream it because that's what gets the big views or something. Like, I wish that was me. You know, and even when I was playing Minecraft, like, all of my Minecraft VODs on YouTube were getting, like, a ton of views compared to my other videos. And, like, if I could, I probably would have stuck with that, because it was like, hey, easy views, you know, that's great. That's probably a good thing. That's what you want. But I can't, because I got out of the mood for Minecraft. So I stopped playing it. It's just, you know, whether it's my success that's on the line, or whether it's, you know, somebody else who just wants me to play their favorite game for longer than a week, you know, no matter what the reason is, I just can't do it. It sucks, but that's just how life is, at least for me. So you can't really get around that. But hopefully I'll be out of this dead zone soon, and I can figure out what I'm really passionate about playing, and then I can play that for hours and hours and hours on end on stream, and it'll be great. But in the end, I think I wanted to mention this, but I don't think I mentioned this yet. I did talk about writing, but I didn't really talk about this point exactly. But first and foremost, you know, I am here streaming, but first and foremost, I am a writer. You know, that comes first in the end. So if, you know, because my idea for it was basically that the streaming would complement the writing, in that anybody who reads my writing and likes it could then come to the stream and, like, talk with me. Because there's so many, like, authors out there that don't really interact with their community all that much. I've never really gotten into any books enough to actually try to contact the authors, but I know there's a lot of people out there that really like certain book series, and the authors are pretty, like, shut off. And, you know, they might make social media posts every so often, but they don't directly talk to the fans very much, or interact with the community. And I was like, I want to talk to the fans. You know, if my writing ever does take off, I want a venue that people can just pop into the stream and be like, hey, I read your stuff, or hey, I have a question about this, or how does this work in the logic system, and all that stuff. You know, I want to be active and there in the community that might come around with my writing. So that's basically one of the reasons why I started streaming. But because my writing has been on hold for a bit because of that issue with the productivity cycle, and how I messed up with the short story where I stopped halfway through, and Now it's really hard to pick back up where I was. It's like I've been focusing a lot on the streaming, but then the writing falls by the wayside, and I need to pick that back up. So, yes. With the streaming, I'll probably not know what to stream for the... Well, I can't really guarantee that I wouldn't know what to stream for the next couple days. Because it could be that right after I end this stream, I'll look through Steam, and I'll be like, hey, there's that game. And then I'll get like super into that game, and then the next like 5 days are going to be dedicated to just playing that game alone. So who knows? Who knows when the dead zone will end? I certainly don't. But we will see. But when I do get out of it, you guys will probably be the first ones to know, because I'll be streaming something other than me talking or Azaric for like the first time in a while. But we'll see. We'll see how things go. I need to play it by ear, because that's kind of how my entire existence works. I am hoping to get an actual video done, which is really difficult because I still can't really edit things of myself, so my plan is that I'll just do it in one take, and hopefully that'll work. I'll just write a script and go off the script and just kind of read it off in one take while recording it, and hope that it's just well formulated enough that I don't have to edit it. That's my plan. I don't know how that's gonna go, but I'm hoping to make like a lore video, because there have been a lot of people, as in like at least 3 or 4, that have been very confused about this character and why it doesn't look, you know, like most characters do, like human, because it's not really human. And I want to explore that in a public setting where anybody who's curious about that kind of thing and the basic lore premise and how this character got the way that they are, it would be nice to have a venue to explain all that, and a video that would actually answer all those questions succinctly and, you know, without giving away too much, because I'm still going to write the full story of this character's backstory, you know, because the Archivist is pretty important, not only for the streaming, but also the book universe in general. So I am going to write his full story eventually at some point, and that's going to be fun. But until I get around to that, I at least want a video out explaining the basics. And there's a lot of, you know, fantasy and sci-fi biology going on, you know, with the eyes being exactly how they are and how that works and the logic behind it, and, you know, all that stuff. Every portion of this character's design, except for maybe the ensemble, the clothing, because, I mean, originally this character doesn't need clothing because they're a transcendent being. They don't really require such things, but I felt that the model would be way too boring without a interesting ensemble, so I picked like a Buccaneer uniform that, you know, I like the look of it, and the character does kind of wear something similar at some point in the story, so I was like, it's the only thing that really fits for that, so we'll go with that. But yeah, generally, the character is very odd when it is compared to human beings and all that. But there's a logic behind it, and I'll explain all that. There's a very specific and, you know, well thought out logic to every single portion of the character's being. And you'll see that, you'll understand it, it'll be great. I just need to actually write out the script and then record it and then post it, and hopefully that goes well. But yeah, that's basically my plan for the next little while, is try to get that video done, try to write more, and eventually, hopefully, I'll feel like playing something again. Because as I said, recently I've just been watching TV. That's pretty much been, like, in all my downtime, that's all I've been doing. Because no game has just been, you know, good. I don't know. I don't know what other word to say for it. It's just, none of it's fit. None of it's been appealing to me or something. So, anyways, I'm gonna stop talking, because I've been talking for an hour and a half, and while I can do like 6-hour streams, usually that's with talking interspersed between, you know, playing games and not talking and all that. but since I've been talking pretty much non-stop, pretty dang consistently the last hour and a half, my voice is getting a little sore. So I gotta stop, and I'm gonna be back probably tomorrow, hopefully, and either I'll be playing a game or maybe just playing Azaric because I need to finish that, and I kind of just need to push through it because I have a vendetta. I will finish that game no matter the cost. I mean, it's only like a 30-hour game total, and I've already played 2 streams of it, I think. So I'm a good ways in. I'll get there. We'll finish this. But yes, I'm gonna go, and I'll be back at some point in the future, hopefully, unless I like die or something. But I kind of doubt that. You know, it hasn't happened in the last like 20 plus years, so I don't think it'll be happening now. So yeah, see you guys next time. Let me turn the thing back up. I don't remember what setting it was actually at. But yeah, BGM's back up. So yeah, goodbye. I don't know how to end streams. I'm really bad. I really need to get like an ending saying that, you know, a lot of streamers have something that they say at the end of the stream. I do not. I haven't prepared one of those yet. I have an opening thing, but not an ending thing. So ending streams is like really awkward for me. But yeah, it could be a lot awkward if I just stopped talking. So I'm gonna do that. Okay, bye.